Good morning, scholar students. This is Mr. Detero, and we'll be taking sense organs. In our previous presentation, we talked about nervous system, and we talked about how sensory cells, receptors, are spread around in the sense organs. So today, we'll talk about sense organs. And in this first part of the presentation, we'll major on skin, nose, and tongue as the sense organ. Okay, so there are five basic sense organs. You have the skin, the nose, the ear, the eyes, and the tongue. And all these sense organs, they are associated with the brain. In our previous presentation, we talked about the nervous system, talking about the brain as a central nervous system. And the brain is associated with all these sense organs. The receptors are embedded in the sense organs, and they transmit the stimulus into impulses that are being interpreted by the brain. So you can see that there are different parts of the brain that is responsible for touch, for taste, for smell, for sound, and for sight. And all these major five sense organs that are located in our body are closely associated with the sense organs. Now, let's talk about these sensory receptors. I said the sensory receptors, they are located in each of these sense organs that I've talked about. And what they do is that when they receive stimuli, they transform those stimuli into impulses. And subsequently, they send it to the central nervous system. And what the central nervous system will do as the control site is that it will interpret the message and send back the appropriate response. So there are some major receptors. Now let's take them one after the other. We have the mechanoreceptors, and the mechanoreceptors detect mechanical stimuli like sound, gravity, pressure, pain, and vibration. We also have thermoreceptors, and from the word thermo, we know that it has to do with thermal stimuli. So it dictates thermal stimuli, and that is associated with heat and cold. The chemoreceptors dictate chemical stimuli, and that is associated with odor and taste. The photoreceptors detect electromagnetic visual stimuli, and it has to do with light intensity and color. So these receptors that we talked about, they are found in different sense organs. Like we can have one or two receptors in one sense organ, like we have the mechanoreceptors and the thermoreceptors in the skin. We have the chemoreceptors in the nose and in the tongue. We have the photoreceptors in the eyes. So they detect different stimuli and help the sense organs. Now let's talk about the skin as a sense organ. The skin is the largest sense organ. It's spread round over the mammalian body. Mammal skin is usually found in mammals, and we know that it is like the intermediate between the external environment. It covers the internal organ, so it is richly supplied with sensory receptors. And what they do is that they dictate sensation of touch, of pressure, of pain, cold, and heat. So those receptors, they are mainly nerve endings, and they might not be evenly distributed in all parts. You know, when we talked about the skin the other time, we mentioned the two layers, epidermis and dermis. So some receptors are not spread around the epidermis. Some are concentrated in some certain areas of the skin, like the touch receptors. Like we talk about the touch receptors now, they are close to the surface of the skin. So they are found in the epidermis, close to the surface, so that you can quickly, anybody that touch the skin, these receptors can quickly pick it and send it to the appropriate organ for response. So they are also attached to hair follicles. Even if it is the hair on the skin that something touch, you can quickly perceive it. Then the touch receptors are concentrated in the fingertips, in the face and in the neck. So you will see that even the blind people, they make use of their fingertips to detect things around them, because the touch receptors, they are concentrated at the fingertips. And if one is blindfolded and you want to see the next person or what is next to you, you can quickly use your finger or you use your hand to trace the person's face, and you'll be able to know the person that is next to you. So the touch receptors, they are located at the surface of the skin, and they are much more concentrated at the fingertip, the face, and the neck. Now, the pressure receptor, on the other hand, is located down in the dermis. So you find it in the joints and in the muscles. You will say that that is deep down the skin. So the cold and heat receptors, they are widely distributed both in the epidermis and in the dermis. And they are called the thermoreceptors, like I've said the other time. So the thermoreceptors play an important role in regulation of body temperature. When we discussed homeostasis in our previous presentation, we talked about the role of the skin as regulating body temperature. So the thermoreceptors, they are the ones that are involved in regulating temperature. So overstimulation of thermoreceptors and pressure receptors, they can cause sensations of pain. So that special pain receptors, they are called nociceptors, and they are also present both in the epidermis and in the many internal organs. Let's talk about smell, the organs of smell. Now, the olfactory organs, they consist of groups of chemoreceptors, and they are called the organ of smell. And these olfactory organs, they are located in the nose. So they are the organs, they are found in the olfactory organs, they are found in the epithelial lining of the upper portion of the nasal cavity. The nasal cavity is the upper part of the nose. So the chemoreceptors are found in the upper part, and the chemicals floating in the surrounding air dissolved in the mucous film and stimulate the chemoreceptors to send sensory impulses to the olfactory nerves. Now, we talked about olfactory nerves during our last presentation. Olfactory nerves is one of the cranial nerves that evolved from the brain. So what it does is that it connects the brain to the olfactory organs. So it takes all the impulses that has been received by chemoreceptors to the brain, and the brain interprets it. So you'll be able to say that, okay, what I'm perceiving, is it actually a fried rice or is ẹ̀fọ́ rírò? Oh no, it's not ẹ̀fọ́ now. No, the ẹ̀fọ́ has ẹ̀gúsí. No, it's just full of, even when you have not tasted it, you can analyze the things inside it because of the brain helping to interpret those smells. So you can see the smell being dissolved, the molecules of what we are perceiving being dissolved in the air. So they enter, and the chemoreceptors change the stimuli to impulses that are being transmitted by the olfactory nerves, that are being carried by the olfactory nerves to the brain, and the brain now interpret the response. So this is what happens here. These are the olfactory bulb, olfactory cilia, and the odor molecule, how the odor molecule dissolve in the olfactory cilia, and they are being carried in the olfactory bulb and transferred through the olfactory nerves to the brain. So thus the olfactory organ is able to, perceive smells. So do not forget that I said that the type of receptor that are found in the nose, they are chemoreceptors. Okay, so let's talk about the organs of taste. Now, taste in mammals are known as taste receptors. The organ that is responsible, they are known as taste receptors, and they are grouped on the upper surface of the tongue. So the soft papillate and the surface of the back of the mouth. So the receptors are grouped in different parts of the tongue. Those receptors, they are like bird-like projections that you call taste buds. You call them taste buds. And in human beings, there are three basic tastes. It can either be sweet or salty, or it is sour, or it is bitter. So you have those tastes on different parts of the tongue. Now you have the sweet or salty they are located in front of the tongue, at the tip of the tongue. So when you taste something, the first thing you taste there it is sweet or it is salty. And by the time you take the food and roll it, then you begin to feel if it is sour by the sides. So the sour taste is at the sides of each tongue. Then by the time you attempt to swallow it down, then you know that, oh, it's bitter. So the bitter part, the receptors that take the bitter part is located at the back of the tongue. And we can see that some receptors are called the papillae. They are on the tongue. So they also help to dissolve the chemoreceptors and take the message to the brain that interprets the particular taste. So far, we've talked about sense organs and some receptors. We talked about the mechanoreceptors, the thermoreceptors. We talked about the chemoreceptors and the photoreceptors. So we only major on the skin, the nose, and the tongue. Those are the three major sense organs that we talked about in this presentation. In our next presentation, we will talk about the other sense organs. So I want to refer you back to our cardinal textbook, which is comprehensive certificate biology. So I want you to answer some questions in the sense organs start from page 469. So I want you to answer some questions that are related to this presentation, especially the objective questions, because our test will come out from there, starting from page 485 to page 488. So you can like this presentation and subscribe at no cost. Thank you for listening. Good day, students. This is Scholars Universal's online class, and this is the second part of our presentation on sense organs. So we'll be talking about the eyes. In our previous presentation, we talked about the tongue, the skin, and the nose. We talked about how some receptors are embedded in each of these sense organs. We mentioned the mechanoreceptors, the thermoreceptors, the chemoreceptors, and the photoreceptors. So they are embedded in each sense organs, and what they do is that they carry stimulus and transform stimulus to impulses and take the impulses to the brain for appropriate response. So to this presentation, we cover eyes as a sense organ. Now, the eyes, like I've said, is an organ of sight, and the possession of light sensitive cells, they are common in animal kingdom and in some plants. But in the primitive forms of these animals and plants that can detect light, the cells only detect the presence of light. But in the advanced form, apart from detecting the presence of light, they also form images. So some of these have simple eyes, like we have in caterpillar, which is the larval stage of some insects. So they have simple eyes, and the adults of those insects have compound eyes. So we have compound eyes found in most of the arthropods, the annelids, and the mollusks. And the major difference between simple eyes and the compound eyes is the number of these ommatidia. So compound eyes are made up of tiny units. They have many ommatidia, and each unit have a clear surface. So they have a focusing lens and a light sensitive cells. Now let's talk about the eye. Now we know the eye in vertebrates, they are able to form image. They're not just dictating the presence of light, but they form image. They transform whatever they see into image, which gives a clear image of what they are focused on. So in mammals, the visual stimulus is dictated by photoreceptors in specialized sense organs called eyes. So in the eyes, there are several, in fact, close to 100 millions of photoreceptors that are embedded in it. And each eye is a spherical organ. We can see that it is not round, it is spherical instead. Then the eyeball is being located in a bony socket of the skull. The skull is the bony part of the head. So the eyeball is located in the skull. And the eyelid, this is the eyelid. This is the eyelid, both up and down. So the eyelid is the one that protects the exposed part of the eyes. This is the part that is exposed. So it covers it, and as the eyes blinks, the tear fluid from the tear gland under the eyelid spread over the eye surface. So we have a tear gland that produce what we call tear fluid. It is embedded under the eyelid. So it produces fluids that contain lysosomes that attack germs. So the fluid, now you will see that sometimes when something enters into the eyes blink itself. And by blinking, it flushes, the water comes down to flush the exposed part of the eyes. And by so doing, you will see that even the whatever enters the eye will be killed by the fluid. And by the time you try to roll the eyeball, you can pick up whatever entered the eye by the corner of the eye. So the fluid that is being produced by this tear fluid has this special function of attacking germs that enters into the eyes. Then the fluid also drains through a tear duct into the nasal cavity. There's a tear duct that connects the eyes to the nose, nasal cavity. You will see that when something bad happens and you have to cry, shed tears for a long time, you will see that mucus will be coming from the nose too. So the tear the gland also, the fluid can drain through the tear duct into the nasal cavity. So each eyeball is attached within the eye socket by 6 muscles. Some textbooks will refer to those muscles as ciliary muscles. And the contraction and the relaxation of those muscles enables the eyeball to move in many directions. So without even shaking or moving your head, you can roll the airball to look upward, to look downward, and that is done by the contraction and the relaxation of those muscles that uphold some things in the eyes. Now, the action of these muscles widens the field of vision of the eye. So you can also see a wide view, because the muscle is able to contract and relax for us to see different areas. Then among these muscles and towards the back of the eyes is a thick optic nerve which connects the eyes to the brain. So the nerve, I've mentioned optic nerve when we had our presentation on nervous system. So it's also one of the cranial nerves. They evolve from the brain. They connect the brain to the eyes. So what they do is that they take the impulse that the eyes receive, the impulses, they take it from the eyes to the brain. So the brain will interpret it and send it back to the eyes. Okay, so this is the structure of the eyes. This is what we see outside. If you look at your friend or you look at the mirror, this is what we see. You see the white parts, which is the sclera. You see the iris. You see the conjunctiva. You see, this is what we see outside. Is the eyelid and the eyelashes. They all have their own function in protecting the eyes. But when the eyes is being cut into a vertical section, this is what we have. So it will show the inside of the eyeball, which is filled with hollow structures. So the wall consists of 3 layers. You have the sclera. This is the sclera. You have the choroid. the choroids, and you have the retina. So these are the three main layers of the eye when the eye is being cut into vertical section. This is what we have. So the scleral is the outermost layer, the choroid is the middle layer, and the retinal is the innermost layer. So let's take this layer one after the other. The scleral, it is a white top connective tissue, and what it does is that it maintains and protects the spherical shape of the eyeball. So mainly it protects the shape and maintain the shape of the eyeball. Then it bulges out at the exposed part of the eye to form the transparent cornea. This is the first layer. It bulges out to form, look at it, the layer bulges out like this to form the cornea. This is the cornea. So the white part here is the sclera, and if you look at it from here, this is the front view, this is the sclera. So it bulges out to form the transparent cornea. Then the eyelid are covered at the inside by a transparent membrane. The eyelid are covered inside by a transparent membrane called conjunctiva. So what the conjunctiva does is that it covers and protects the cornea. Now, when we have infection of the eyes, the conjunctiva can be affected, and we call the disease conjunctivitis. We are still going to talk about it when we are talking about the disease of the eyes. Now, the choroid and the retina. The choroid is the second pigment, the middle pigment, and is made up of pigmented cells. It is richly supplied with blood capillaries. So it is the one that supplies nutrients to the eyes. So what it does is that it supplies nutrients that are being carried by those blood capillaries to other parts of the cell. Now the retina, which is the innermost layer, is a light sensitive layer, and it is restricted to the back of the eyeball. So this is the retina, restricted at the back of the eyeball. Now it gets its nourishment from the capillaries that are present in the choroid layer. It also contains numerous photoreceptors. Those photoreceptors, they are of two types. We have the rods and the cones. The rods, they are responsible for black and white vision and also night vision. So if you see something, the rod is the one that will interpret what color that is there. The cone is the rods interpret the black and white, but the cone is responsible for color vision. If there are other color like the red and all those things, so the cone will interpret that. Now let's talk about the parts of the eyes and their function. I have already mentioned some function, but let's go through every one after the other. The sclerotic layer is like the sclera that I've talked about, and I have said that what it does is that it maintains and supports the shape of the eyes. So it helps to maintain the shape of the eye. It surrounds the eyes and it helps to maintain the shape of the eyes. You can see where it is here, the sclera. Now the conjunctiva is a thin layer that covers the front of the eye. And when we have infection, we said that it is called infection of the eye is called conjunctivitis, can occur. The cornea, which is the part of the eye that bulges out, it is under the conjunctiva, and what it does is that it allows air to enter into the eyes. It is one of the part of the eye that refracts the light. So it allows light to enter into the eyes. The pupil is the hole in the center of the iris. In the dark, the pupil opens up to allow more light to come in. So you can say that it is being dilated. When there is no light in the dark, the pupil enlarges to absorb more light. So it is said to be dilated. But when the light is very bright, the pupil shuts down to a small hole. So it contracts to reduce the amount of light that enters into the eye. So the aqueous humor is a watery liquid that fills this space. This is where the aqueous humor fills. And what it does is that it helps to maintain the shape of the eye. like the vitreous humor too. This is where the vitreous humor is. So they are also liquid, or the vitreous humor is jelly-like, and it also maintains the shape of the eyes. The choroid, like we have said, that it is rich in blood vessels, so it supplies blood and oxygen and nutrients that are needed by the eye. The retina is the light sensitive area. We said it contains many photoreceptors, and that is where the image is formed. So those images that are formed are being sent to the brain for appropriate interpretation. The yellow spot is a section of the retina directly behind the pupil that contain a large amount of color sensitive cells. This is why you look directly at an object to see it most clearly. So that spot is also part of the retina. The blind spot is void of light. So that is where the blood vessels and the optic nerve join the eyeball. And it is called no light sensitive cells. So there is no image that is formed at that site. Now the optic nerves, like I have mentioned the other time, that it joins the eyes to the brain. So it passes information that is being received by these receptors found in the retina. They are being sent to the brain by the optic nerves. So the brain will now process the information, interpret it, and send it back to the eyes. The lens is a very important part of the eyes. This is a lens here. And what it does is that it helps to focus an image on the black surface of the eyes. So it also refracts the light. So the suspensory ligaments, they are the one that holds the lens in place. The ciliary muscle also change the shape of the lens. They also support the lens, and they help the lens to contract or to relax to be able to focus very well. So let's talk about the lens now. Like I've shown you in the previous image, that it is a transparent material with two plane surfaces. One of the surface is at least curved. So there are two major types of lenses. We have the convex lenses, which causes the light to pass through it, the light that pass through it to bend towards each other. So what it does is that it converges the light. This is an example of a convex lens. These are rays of light coming to pass through it, and it bends them towards each other. So it converges. It can also be called a converging lens. A concave lens, on the other hand, it causes the light that pass through it to bend away from each other. It scatters the light rays. This second one is a concave lens that can also be called a diverging lens. You can see it diverging the light rays, scattering it. So if I ask you that what kind of lens do we have in the eyes, you can see that the kind of lens is a convex type, because it brings it together to a particular focus. Now, how do the eyes work? The light rays that enters from, before you can picture on any object, there has to be a light ray around it. If there's no light ray, then you are in complete darkness, then you cannot picture, you don't know what you are focusing on. But when there's a light ray on that object, it enters into the eye through the cornea, the aqueous humor, the lens, the vitreous humor, and most along the optical axis. So those rays are refracted and brought to a focus on the retina. I have already said that the retina is where the image is being formed. And the image that is being formed, though it is a real image, but it is inverted and it's smaller than the object. You can see now that this is a closer image. And this image, the light rays enter into the cornea, to the aqueous humor here, to the lens, to the vitreous humor, and to the retina, where the image is being formed. We can see that the image that is being formed is inverted. So the rays are refracted both at the cornea and at the lens. And the refraction of light within the walls of the eyeball is prevented by the dark pigment of the choroid layer. Now, the distance of the image that is being focused will determine the adjustment of the lens. You can see now that here the lens is thick because it's focusing on a closer object. So the ciliary muscles will contract, the suspensory ligaments will also relax, and the lens will become thicker. But here is the lens is focusing on a far image. So what happens is that the ciliary muscles that support the lens, they will relax. The suspensory ligaments will also thicken up. So you have a thin lens to be able to focus. So those are what we call accommodation, the ability of the eyes to focus either far or near objects based on the adjustment of the ciliary muscles and the lens. So the ciliary muscles that oppose the lens, they contract or relax to thicken up or to lighten up the lens to be able to focus on far and distant objects. So I said that when the image is being formed on the retina, it is being inverted. So the point of light which falls on the retina stimulate the photoreceptors. I said the main types of photoreceptors, they are the rod and the cone on the retina. So by the time the image is being formed on the retina, the photoreceptors transmit those stimulus into electrical impulses. So they are being carried by the optic nerves to the brain. Then the brain now interprets it and translate the image that is being formed as upright with the correct size and the appropriate distance of the eyes. We can see it here. This is the real image, the actual image. This is the eyes trying to focus. This is the type of image that is being formed on the retina. And by the time the brain interprets it, you can see that this is smaller compared to the real actual image. But by the time the brain interprets it, it has become upright with the correct length or the size of the image. Now, let's talk about some eye defects. We have short-sightedness, which can be called myopia. That means the eye is able to focus a near object alone. And what happens is that a far object will be formed before the retina, and it is the image that is being formed on the retina that will be interpreted by the brain. So the brain cannot pick up that object. So if you're greeting your friend from far off and you're shouting, you're waving, and the person cannot see you, he's just hearing the sound, he's doing his eye like they can't see far objects. That person have what we call myopia. Is short-sighted. He can only see a near object. Far objects will be formed before the retina. Of course, it can be corrected, and I want to give you that assignment to know the type of lens that will correct that kind of this type of eye defect. Of course, if you are smart enough, you know that a diverging lens will be able to scatter the light more and will enable the light to form on the retina. Okay, so but a long-sighted, which can be called hypermyopia, is the person can only focus on far objects. Close objects cannot be seen properly. They are formed at the back of the retina. Look at it here. They are formed at the back of the retina. Trying to locate the cursor. They are formed at the back of the retina. So you can see that there's no way the brain will be able to interpret this kind of message. But only far objects will be formed on the retina. So using a convex lens will be able to correct this problem. Then presbyopia is just like long-sightedness. The images are also formed behind the retina, but it is due to the elasticity of the ciliary muscles. The ciliary muscles, they can no longer contract and relax to adjust the lens. So the images are not formed at the appropriate place. Then the astigmatism, it is due to uneven curvature of the lens. The lens of the eyes is not evenly curved. So images are formed at different planes and there's no proper focusing. So those are the main eye defects that we have. But eye diseases, I've been mentioned conjunctivitis, infection of the conjunctiva. So this is what you have when you have a conjunctiva. You have a red eye. The white part of the eye become red. The tear gland, the eyelid becomes swollen, and most of the conjunctivitis are viral infections. So it goes on its own. Take a lot of water, take rest. It will wipe. It will go. Once it's finished its life cycle, it will go on its own. And this can also be called Apollo. In the raining time, they say that Apollo is not by looking at the next person, but by touching the liquid or the eye discharge. But this conjunctivitis can also be a bacterial infected. So when there's a bacterial infection with it, that is when you have something like this. You have pulses and eye discharge coming out from it. You have itching and pain in the eye, and that is the type of bacterial conjunctivitis. So with this, one needs to take an ear drop or go to the doctor to recommend the appropriate drug to take. Now, another eye disease is night blindness. Night blindness, you can see the person cannot focus anything in the night. Then another type of eye disease is cataracts, and it is caused by cloudy lens. What will make the lens to be cloudy is growth of bacteria on the lens. Look at the lens, just like you have your glasses, and there are a lot of dirt on it. So you can see growth of bacteria on the lens will make the lens to be cloudy. So the lens cannot refract light, and if this is not treated, it can lead to permanent blindness. This is what we have, the result of cloudy lens leading to cataracts. So the another type of eye disease is glaucoma. When you have the optic nerve being infected, disease of the optic nerve can no longer transmit impulses to the brain. So when it is, there are different stages. It can be corrected. Both cataracts and glaucoma, cataracts can be corrected by eye surgery, but glaucoma, depending on the stage, might not be cured, but can be maintained. So you will see that we need to care for our eyes, and some things we can do to care for our eyes is reading books under good light condition. When the light is not clear enough, it's not bright enough, don't force it, because it can affect the eyes. Then not rubbing eyes with dirty fingers. By the time you touch somebody that has Apollo and has been rubbing his handkerchief on his eyes, you touch it and you rub it on your eyes, then you automatically have conjunctivitis, and you'll be saying it's because I've looked at the person or it's because I've eaten corn. Those things are not associated with it, but improper care of the eyes can cause those eye infection. Then we should see the doctor in case we have any eye infection. Sometimes you have eye disease and you try to maintain it by yourself, and the result is that it will graduate to serious or severe issues that cannot even be handled by a doctor anymore. So we should see the doctor. Then we avoid eye light intensity from entering into the eyes. Of course, there are other things we could do to maintain the eyes. Regular exercise will help the eyes. We stay hydrated, take a lot of water, it helps the body generally. Quit smoking. Smoking can also affect the eyes. You will see that smokers, their eyes, they are usually very colored, so it can affect the eyes. Then wear safety, when you are exposing your eyes to light, wear safety glasses and all those things. Then you maintain a proper distance to a bright light of eye, beware of the kind of makeup you use, do regular checkup, eat good foods, protect yourself from sun rays. Those are the things you can do to maintain or to care for our eyes. So far, our presentation today have been on the eyes as a sense organ. So we said that images are formed on the retina. We talked about the cornea and the lens being refracting light rather, to form the image on the retina. So they said the retina, they are embedded with photoreceptors. There are of two main types, the rod and the cone. So those ones transmit the stimulus to impulses. the impulses are being transferred by the optic nerves to the brain. So do not forget the eye defect that I talked about, and I want you to draw the correction, how the eye defect can be corrected. So I will also refer you to the comprehensive certificate from page 485 to page 488. Answer related questions, especially the objective questions. Answer questions that are related to this presentation. I want you to like this presentation and subscribe at no cost. Thank you for listening.